Namaste, my dear brothers and sisters. The love and blessings of the Mother and Sri Aurobindo to all of you. I have with me today Aparna Pathak, an architect by qualification, but like many bright young people these days, she has decided to take a break for a year, and she is now constructing lives, teaching children 4 plus to give better citizens to the world. Welcome, Aparna. No matter what we are doing, whether we are an architect or a teacher, uh, we are all on a spiritual journey, and the work that we do is only a vehicle for helping us along on that journey. It helps us progress on that journey. And you are a sincere spiritual seeker. And one of the things that bothers many spiritual seekers is uh, whether I'm really making any progress, because you feel as if you've given up many things which the rest of the world seems to enjoy. So, is that something which you also sometimes feel and reflect upon?
Yes, quite a lot actually. It sometimes at least I feel that maybe we are going in the opposite direction, or are we making any progress? So yes, that is definitely there.
I think you made a very important point. Sometimes you wonder whether you're going in the opposite direction, because uh, spiritual progress is something which is a process. And for a long time, we still remain in primarily the mental consciousness, which has a tendency to calculate. And our thoughts and our feelings are not all our own. Depends not only on our own mental consciousness, but also on the influences that we pick up from the environment and on the comments that other people make on our lives. So all that put together, does not really make us feel as if we are going in the right direction when you are consciously walking the spiritual path. We are all on a spiritual journey, but uh, some people like you are doing it consciously, voluntarily. You have decided that your life will be different from what is considered the so-called normal life. And when you do that, uh, you are missing on many things which the world considers important. And those are things which can be measured and calculated. That is, how much money you make, what position you have, what titles you have, and then how much stability you have in your career. Uh, will this lead you to uh, higher positions, name and fame, and so on and so forth? So, these are all things which can be calculated. But what happens on the spiritual path is that you are giving up these things to some extent, or at least not bothered about these things, because there is some deeper satisfaction which you are getting, which people around you are not able to sense. They can see only what is visible, what can be calculated. They can't see your deeper satisfaction. And sometimes you also feel that is it something real happening to me? Is some real change happening? Uh, because people who sometimes tell you that you are being stupid. As you were saying the other day that सब मुझे पागल समझते हैं. So when people tell you that, they are using certain, they are your well-wishers, and they are using certain yardsticks, certain criteria for progress and being successful in life. So that is what they're doing. And they think that those are things which are likely to make you happy because they seem to make others happy. The fact that they don't always become happy because of it is something that is besides the point. But all the same, the belief continues that these are the types of things that make us happy, things which can be measured and calculated, things which are concrete, like money, power, name and fame, and so on and so forth. So that is what makes us happy. So that feeling persists in spite of even evidence to the contrary, even in our own lives. But we feel maybe more of the same, maybe in a different garb, then it will happen. So, you go on feeling that. So that's why that happens. But then when so much is coming to you from all sources, sometimes you start yourself doubting whether, am I right or is everybody else right? That feeling does come sometimes. And then you feel that if I am right, then at least I should be making some progress and I should be able to see it. And that is where we sometimes go to this question whether I'm really progressing on the spiritual path. Uh, that's not easy to sort of actually measure, but there are some things which we can still do, sort of to feel that yes, something is actually happening. Uh, are you growing in love? Do you find that you are able to love people around you more than you did earlier? Do you feel a sense of oneness with them? Does that seem to be independent of some uh, criteria, the conventional criteria, how this person is related to me biologically, whether the person belongs to the same class, clan, and community and nation, and to the same linguistic group, and so on? Is it based on these things, or is my love for people now becoming more and more independent of these relatively superficial criteria? Is that love rooted in something deeper, which is making me feel one with the person? And as and when there is an opportunity, I'm willing to also express that love by giving what I have if the person seems to need it. So that is one thing that uh, helps you feel that, yes, I'm undergoing some sort of an inner change. Another thing is, that you start uh, reacting less emotionally. Instead of the usual ups and downs of joy and sorrow, you find that the waves are now becoming smaller, and you tend to go towards a more flat line, which can be described as peace rather than joy and sorrow. So, peace has a certain stability. Uh, it is neither those ups nor those downs. So, the both of them, you can't make only the uh, sorrows disappear and the joy still retain that same thrill. So, you tend to settle for peace, so those waves becoming smaller. So that is another criterion. Then, uh, we are always faced with choices. In fact, life is a series of choices, and there are some choices where we feel that it's crucial to decide what is right and wrong. And these choices can be made at three levels primarily. One is at the level of the feelings, that is getting drawn to what, deciding to do what feels good right here and now. The second is at the mental level or the level of the intellect, which calculates, and we tend to choose what is most profitable and least risky. Uh, but there's a third level which goes beyond all these, and that is the level of the soul, which just tells us what is the right thing to do, which seems to be quite independent of both these criteria. It acting on that voice gives us immense joy and lasting mental peace. Not acting on that voice gives us a sense of guilt and recurrent uneasiness, but all the same, we don't always listen to that voice. Now, these three parts of the being don't always have to act, pull us along different directions. So, as you progress on the spiritual path, there's a more and more of a unification of the being, which means that instead of being adversaries, they start becoming collaborators. Now, if you have to dissolve the conflicts between three entities or three people, there are two ways of doing it. One is they all make some compromises and reach a consensus. That is one way. The second is two of them decide that the third one is really wise, the wisest amongst us, and therefore let's just listen to this person. And that's how the consensus is reached. Now, in case of unification of the being, it is the second method that is being followed. Gradually, the emotional part of the being and the intellect start accepting that the soul is the wisest. It is from there that we get the best guidance, because repeatedly this experience is generated. When you listen to that voice, you get joy and lasting mental peace. When you don't listen to it, you get a sense of guilt and recurrent uneasiness. So repetition of such experiences starts training, you can say, the emotional part of the being and the intellect, and they start making the same type of choices, because the emotional part of the being is looking for happiness. Now, this is a different and superior version of happiness which it is getting, which you call joy. And it is coming from expression of love, which is always in our own hands. Unlike our happiness, ordinary happiness, it depends upon getting something which is not always in our own hands. So the emotional part of the being can see that this feels better and it's always in my own hands. And the intellect, of course, is a very versatile tool. It can justify just about anything. So it starts justifying the choice of the emotional part of the being. And what they are doing in a way is both of them are converging towards the same choice which the soul would make. So that is unification of the being. So one way to assess the progress would be to see if you, after you made a choice today, in a similar situation, what is the type of choice I would have made 5 years ago? If you feel that 5 years ago you would have made a choice which was different, which might have been based more on an uh, sort of a cheap thrill which you get at the emotional level, or it would have been based on a calculation at the level of the intellect. But today I made a choice which is different, and both these parts of the being seem to have cooperated. I'm not facing much of a conflict in making that different type of choice today. That it becomes an indicator of a progress.
Got it.
Yet another uh, thing which can be considered the beginning as well as the last step in sort of the path is developing a sense of equanimity, or what Sri Aurobindo calls equality. That is treating all events and circumstances with equal delight. Now, to start with, naturally, it will not uh, be perfect. But as I was saying, that instead of those, the waves will start flattening. So you are able to uh, maintain equanimity, relative equanimity, much better. And even if you're not able to maintain that equanimity, one thing you can see that earlier it took you a long time to come back to your normal self, to be at peace again. Now you may get disturbed, but takes you much less time to come back. So the time that it takes to come back to your normal self also gives you an indication of progress. Now, having said all that, giving some of these criteria, and why I said this equanimity is the last one also, because perfect equanimity is more or less at the end, and perfect equanimity very often depends upon another type of perfection, that is perfect surrender. Surrender to the divine will and wisdom with the full faith that uh, whatever happens is not only an expression of the divine will, but also of the divine wisdom, which is far greater than mine, and I may not see everything that is good about what has happened, but I know at least one thing good that has happened as a result of it. It has helped me grow spiritually, and therefore I'm grateful for it. So it is this that gives the surrender an active sort of a shape. Surrender is not something passive. It's this type of understanding which gives surrender an active form. It's a willing and cheerful surrender. Surrender of a subordinate will to a much higher will. Surrender to of a lower way of looking at an event to a much higher and deeper way of looking at an event. So that's so perfect equanimity and perfect surrender go together, because no matter how what we much we try, uh, difficulties, problems, some unpleasant events will keep happening. But what helps us is that in spite of that, we are not miserable, and we are able to maintain relative equanimity and come back fast to our normal self. But then, having said all that about progress, one more important thing is that we should not be actually obsessed with the progress. It's natural to sometimes, off and on, think about it and reflect on how I might have responded 5 years ago, how I might have chosen something 5 years ago. All those things, sometimes one tends to reflect and feel good about it. But all the same, one should not be obsessed with progress, because getting obsessed with progress does not really take us any nearer the goal. There's a little story about it. There was a person who was who asked his guru how I will reach the point of perfection, Siddhi, on this path, and he was told some guidelines. He was given some guidelines. He followed all those for 20 years quite meticulously, and uh, then he asked his guru, "Have I now got there? Have I reached the goal?" The guru told him, "No, you have not yet reached there. You still have a long way to go, and because you've not been doing things right." So this disciple was very disappointed, and he thought that I missed all the things that my friends were enjoying, and not even got there. So what is the use? Let me also start enjoying at least some of the things which others have been enjoying. So he changed his food, he changed his dress, he changed his way of life. But then he found that he was not enjoying it. He couldn't see what others found in all that type of life. He thought that the way I had lived these 20 years was far more enjoyable than now. So let me go back to that. And he went back to the same lifestyle, same way of life, which he had lived for 20 years. Then his guru came and told him that now you've reached your goal. So he said, how come you told me I have a long way to go and in 20 years I couldn't reach it and now I reached it in such a short time? So his guru told him that till then, for those 20 years, you were living that type of a life because you had a desire. You had a desire to reach the goal. Now, even that desire has disappeared, and that itself is perfection. Uh, the mother has also said, that don't worry about your progress. I'll take care of it. You just do what you have to do. And, one of those very simple, short pieces of advice which she has given is just be simple, be happy, uh, do your work as well as you can, remain open to me. That's all what is expected of you. Just keep doing that and she'll take care of the progress.
Thank you so much.